Hello everyone, and welcome to our Capstone project created by Tanner Galletti and Diego Serrano on digital warfare and geopolitics of the world. Throughout the weeks of working on this Capstone project, we have learned many things about digital warfare and developed a good understanding of how it has changed from the past to its current state and what it will become like in the future. In this video, we hope to educate you on how warfare is changing to become more online based and give you an understanding of how it has been evolving throughout the years. To give a brief layout on how we constructed this video, we will be covering from the past all the way up to the future. When considering the timelines, we are considering incidents before 2000, the past, from 2000 to today's current time will be considered the present, and the future will be anything 5 years ahead of us. So let's begin with how cyber warfare was in the past, or how cyber warfare even begun. The first ever cyber attack was an attack called the Morris Worm. The Morris Worm was created by a man named Robert Morris, who was a recent Cornell University graduate. This attack was a DOS attack, or better known as denial of a service attack, which had lasted for nearly 2 years from November 2nd, 1988 to May 5th, 1990. Causing over millions of dollars worth of damage to all the infected systems. To give a little more insight on how these early stage incidents occurred, here's a short video on covering the topic of the Morris Worm.
So, who was the first hacker in history? One of the first internet hackers was Robert Morris back in 1988. Robert gained mainstream attention after he released his Morris Worm, a malware he developed. The program had infected systems at a number of the prestigious colleges and public and private research centers that made up the early National Electronic Network. This was a year before the invention of the World Wide Web. It took 72 hours for researchers to halt the worm. In that time, it infected tens of thousands of systems, about 10% of the computers then on the internet, effectively knocking them off the network.
Now, although this concept just seems like a simple malware attack, this had opened a huge concept into the cyber world. This had created the idea of how different attacks could develop and attack certain systems. And with new types of ways to attack, this brought many new ways to defend and prevent these attacks from coming. Ultimately beginning the concept of cyber warfare, all from a recent college graduate releasing malicious software onto other systems. Now we move on from the past and move into today's present world on cyber warfare. Everything cyber in today's world is much more advanced compared to the past and is rapidly changing every day. As most people know, throughout most of warfare, there has been 4 domains, which are naval, ground, air, and space. But with changes made in 2004 by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who are members of the United States Department of Defense, they had declared cyberspace to become the 5th domain in warfare. One of the most well-known cyber attacks was a computer virus named Stuxnet. This attack happened sometime in June 2010 and was considered one of the first cyber warfare attacks launched. This virus was created to access and destroy Iranian centrifuges used at Iran's uranium enrichment facilities in Natanz. Now here's a quick video to give you a brief and more in-depth idea of what Stuxnet was and how it worked.
A computer virus called Stuxnet was discovered lurking in the databanks of power plants, traffic control systems, and factories around the world. 20 times more complex than any previous virus code, it had an array of capabilities. Among them, the ability to turn up the pressure inside nuclear reactors or switch off oil pipelines, and Stuxnet could tell the system operators everything was normal. Unlike most viruses, Stuxnet doesn't carry the usual forged security clearance that helps viruses burrow into systems. It actually had a real clearance, stolen from one of the most reputable computer technology companies in the world. It exploited security gaps that system creators are unaware of. These holes are known as 0 days, and the most successful viruses exploit them. The details of a 0 day can be sold on the black market for $100,000. Stuxnet took advantage of 20 0 days. But once it got into a system, it didn't always activate. Buried deep in the Stuxnet code was a specific target. Without that target, the virus remained dormant. What was it looking to shut down? The centrifuges that spin nuclear material at Iran's enrichment facilities. Stuxnet was a weapon, the first to be made entirely out of code.
Even though this attack was launched over 10 years ago, these types of attacks are still used in today's world, because it is a computer virus and machines are still being affected every day. Although we mainly only covered Stuxnet virus, there are still multiple different attacks that are happening in today's world. There are denial of service attacks, malware-based attacks, phishing attacks, and many, many more that it would take too long to cover. But as you can see, cyber attacks are becoming much more common and much more advanced compared to how these cyber attacks were in the past.
So, where is cyber warfare going in the future? The most logical answer is that it's going to keep growing and eventually it's going to become more dangerous than normal warfare. Cyber weapons have become more common than before when it comes to advanced technology in war. The connections between cyber and physical assets are growing, bringing a greater risk to both network and physical infrastructure security. Most common targets for cyber attacks are infrastructure, companies, and resources. An example of cyber attacks used in a non-war scenario is the 2021 Texas freeze. Millions of people lost water access, food storage, and electricity on this attack.
They over there asleep. We're down to the last piece of wood. We need some help. Where you at in Dallas, Texas?
Holy shit! Are you kidding me right now? Oh my god!
So this is what happens in Texas when the water freezes and you try to drip your faucets.
So that's the inside of the window. Again, the inside. Straight ice.
More services are being provided digitally, including essential ones like banking and healthcare. More people are also working remotely on home networks and personal devices. Home networks and personal devices tend to be less secure than company-wide networks or devices. Cyber warfare could also have impact on the scale of a natural disaster. For example, knocking out a power grid could create a similar condition to the 2021 Texas freeze. Cyber war has a distinct place in the American imagination. 93% of Americans know to fear cyber war and only 19% believe the government can protect them against such threat. That's 10% more than the previous year. So in conclusion, people must update, their laptops and computers, very often because these type of things are growing and are going to keep growing in the future. So definitely keep that in mind.
Concern is a real campaign, right, that maybe would include simultaneous or near simultaneous attacks against the financial sector, the energy sector, maybe into the air traffic control system. At the same time, it's combined with maybe some type of activity in the real world, right? Some kind of confrontation in the Persian Gulf or the Straits of Taiwan. But being able to reach out and touch us being the United States, in ways that have a strategic impact to the well-being of the country, whether it's financially, whether it's physically, is a real concern, because that means that if there were something to happen in the Straits of Taiwan or the South China Sea or Eastern Europe or whatever it is, the war is no longer isolated to that geographic area. And so that ability to reach out and touch us. And so I firmly believe that China and Russia think about this in a very holistic way, and cyberspace operations are integrated with all of their other operations and their ways to exercise power. And that's what we should be concerned with, would be a very comprehensive attack that didn't have a devastating effect on any of those one areas, but in combination really had a significant impact.
This project was an amazing opportunity to explore more for me and Tanner, to explore more about our mayor and what impact that could have in the future and the current state of it. And I learned how to edit more. I just learned how to edit short TikTok style videos, so that was cool. And yes, overall, Tanner was an amazing partner to work with, and it's been an honor to work with him. So Thank you.
Working throughout this capstone, I had a great time. There were some things I already knew about beforehand, but it was really nice to get a refresher on some things. And then there were some things I've learned about that I've never even heard of, which was really fun to enjoy. My favorite part about the project was learning about the cyber attacks and reading about them. I had a great time working with Diego, and I'm very thankful to have him as a partner. He made this project very enjoyable. I wanted to say thank you guys again for watching, and I really hope you took something away from this video and enjoyed it. Thank you again.